Welcome back, everyone, to Kibitz.
Hey there.
We're the place you turn to when you see those wild internet stories and think, okay, what's really going on here?
And today, we're digging into Reddit stories again. This time, we're heading into a coffee shop.
Yeah, not your usual setting for high drama, maybe, but
Hi.
this one, it's got layers. We're
Yeah.
talking workplace stress, fed-up customer service workers.
Well, a really unconventional way of handling things, like really unconventional.
All right. The title is AITA for pretending to get fired when customers get a temper with me. And it reads, I am a high schooler with a weekend job at a coffee shop. My coworkers who work weekends are James, the owner's son. He goes to my school. He's a shift manager, but it's not a real formal thing. He's a friendly guy. Danielle, a college student who sometimes works weekends too. So sometimes customers will come in and just be angry about such little stuff, like literally blow up about nothing. I don't know, they're in a bad mood already and looking for someone to take it out on or what, but it's a lot. Like how sad so you have to be a grown-ass man taking your anger out on high school and college kids. So James and I were joking about having a little fun with them and hopefully getting them off our backs. So one day I was at work and some guy was having a temper about how we don't make the coffee hot enough, which I couldn't do a thing about because I gave it to him right out of the machine. So James came in and was like, sir, is there a problem here? And I started ranting at him too. So he was just like, OP, this is unacceptable. You're fired. I started acting real sad, like, no, please don't fire me. My family needs the money. I need this job, please. And he played up being a hard ass, telling me to take off my apron and leave. The angry guy started to backtrack, like, it isn't that big of a problem. You don't need to fire her over it. I didn't mean it. And James was like, no, we pride ourselves on the best customer service. Of course, after all that drama, I still had my job. We were just acting. And we've done it a couple times. Whenever a customer will lose their temper at Danielle or I, James will storm in and fire us. And almost every time, the person who had come in angry will apologize and say that they didn't mean it. It's kind of satisfying making people realize their actions might actually have consequences. Anyway, I was telling my friends from school about this, and a few of them thought it was a mean prank to let someone go away thinking they'd gotten someone who desperately needs some money fired. Am I the A for this joke? End quote. Phew, that's quite something.
Yeah. You can just picture that whole scene unfolding, can't you? The yelling, the fake firing, the sudden panic from the customer. Intense.
So let's start with the why. Why did they even feel the need to resort to something so extreme?
Well, the OP lays it out pretty clearly. They talk about customers just blowing up about nothing. It sounds like a pattern of behavior they're facing.
And feeling like targets, right? Especially being young workers. The grown-ass man taking your anger out on high school and college kids line really hits.
It speaks volumes about the power dynamic. There's this expectation in many service jobs, what sociologists call emotional labor. You have to be pleasant, manage your feelings, even when someone's being awful.
Which must be incredibly draining, especially if it happens often.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
particularly when you feel like you have no real recourse. The customer complains, maybe even lies, and management often just sides with the customer to avoid hassle. The employee feels trapped.
So this feeling of being powerless, of being an emotional punching bag, that's the backdrop.
Exactly. It's a systemic issue, not just one bad customer.
Yeah.
And the OP specifically mentions this feeling of injustice, that it's just sad that adults act this way towards kids trying to do a job.
And the specific trigger for this first prank, the coffee not being hot enough.
Yeah, and the OP says it came right out of the machine, which suggests the complaint itself wasn't really reasonable.
Right. It wasn't like they messed up an order or spilled something. It was something they couldn't control.
Which makes you wonder, like the OP did, was the customer really upset about the coffee temperature, or were they just looking for conflict, an outlet for some other frustration?
That seems plausible. If the complaint is objectively kind of nonsensical, then fixing the coffee probably wouldn't have solved the underlying issue, which was the customer's anger itself.
Precisely. And maybe that's why the standard customer service playbook offer a remake, apologize profusely, might have felt useless here. The OP and James perhaps sensed that this guy wasn't looking for a solution, he was looking for a reaction.
So, faced with that, and the history of similar incidents, they decided to give him a reaction he wasn't expecting.
A huge one. Which leads us into the mechanics of the prank itself. Why does it work so consistently?
Yeah, the OP says almost every time the person apologizes. That's remarkably effective.
It is, and I think it boils down to a massive instant shift in the power dynamic and the perceived consequences.
Okay, break that down. Initially, who has the power?
The customer. Clearly. They're the one complaining. They have the potential to cause trouble for the employee, maybe even get them reprimanded or, in their worst fears, fired. They're the aggressor.
They feel righteous, even if their complaint is flimsy. My coffee isn't hot enough. This is bad service.
Right. They're focused on their grievance. But then James storms in. OP, this is unacceptable. You're fired. What happens then?
Everything flips. Suddenly the focus isn't the coffee anymore, it's the catastrophic outcome, this kid losing their job.
Exactly. The customer instantly goes from being the aggrieved party to being the cause of this terrible thing, in their mind at least.
And the OP's acting, that's key, isn't it? No, please don't fire me. My family needs the money. I need this job.
Oh, absolutely crucial. It's not just, oh no, I'm fired. It's a whole narrative designed to maximize guilt and empathy. It hits basic human fears about poverty, desperation, family.
It forces the customer to see a potential human cost to their outburst, way beyond just getting a hotter coffee.
It triggers what we might call moral panic. The customer thinks, oh my God, I did this. I got this poor kid fired because I complained about my drink. The gap between their minor issue and the major consequence is jarring.
And their immediate reaction is backtracking. Whoa, hang on, it wasn't that big a deal. I didn't mean for this to happen.
They want to undo it. Not necessarily because they suddenly regret yelling, but because they desperately want to shed the unbearable weight of having caused someone serious harm. They want absolution from that perceived guilt.
It's fascinating. They manipulate the customer's conscience.
They absolutely do, which brings us straight to the ethical core of this and why the OP's friends called it a mean prank.
Right. The friends are basically saying, okay, maybe the customer was a jerk, but is it okay to make someone genuinely believe, even for a few minutes, that they ruined a needy person's life?
That's the question. Is it ethical to intentionally cause that level of acute distress, that moral panic, just to teach a lesson or get an apology?
Well, from the OP's perspective, maybe it feels proportional, like you caused me distress with your yelling and entitlement, so I'm giving you a taste of a different kind of distress, the satisfaction they mention, making people realize their actions might actually have consequences.
There's definitely a sense of justice served, at least in the moment. The consequence feels immediate and impactful, even if it's fake. Does the end, getting the apology, stopping the abuse, justify the means, the emotional manipulation?
I lean towards yes, honestly. They're defending themselves. The customer initiated the hostility over something trivial. This was just a very effective countermove. The consequence wasn't real harm, just the fear of having caused harm.
I see that argument, and the desire for accountability is strong. But I think we also have to consider the potential psychological residue for the customer. They walk away relieved it wasn't real, sure, but they've just experienced a pretty intense moment of believing they did something awful. Does that genuinely teach a lesson, or does it just create a weird, lingering sense of unease or even resentment later?
That's a fair point. Does the shock actually lead to reflection or just relief that they dodged a bullet?
And is engineered guilt the best teacher? It feels different from experiencing the natural consequences of your actions. This consequence was entirely fabricated.
Okay, so the ethics are definitely murky, but let's shift gears slightly to the practical side. The logistics and the risks involved here, especially for James.
Yeah, this is where my internal HR alarm bells start ringing loudly. James, being the owner's son and shift manager, might feel like he has the authority, but he's taking some massive risks.
Like what? What's the biggest danger here?
Reputation, for one. Imagine someone else is in the shop, a regular customer, someone who likes the place. They witness this scene. Manager yelling, employee crying about needing money, getting fired on the spot over coffee.
They don't know it's fake.
Exactly. They just see what looks like incredibly harsh, unprofessional, frankly unstable management. Would you want to go back to a place where the manager fires desperate-sounding teenagers that easily?
Probably not. It makes the whole business look bad. You tell your friends, maybe leave a bad review.
Right. So James, in trying to protect his staff in the moment, could actually be poisoning the well for the business long term if the wrong person sees this performance.
And the line James uses, no, we pride ourselves on the best customer service while firing someone dramatically. That's just ironic, contradictory.
It's deeply contradictory. If you pride yourself on customer service, you handle complaints professionally. You don't create a public spectacle and fire staff theatrically. It completely undermines the very value he's claiming to uphold.
Okay, so reputational risk is huge. What else?
Legal and HR ambiguity. This is potentially even more serious. They are essentially creating a documented history of fake firings.
How does that become a problem later?
Well, imagine if Down the line, the OP or Danielle actually needs to be fired for a legitimate reason, maybe attendance issues or performance problems,
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
If they contest it, maybe file for unemployment or even sue for wrongful termination, their lawyer could absolutely bring up this history. Your Honor, management at this coffee shop has a documented pattern of staging fake, dramatic terminations. How can we be sure this firing isn't just another performance or wasn't done improperly given their history of theatrics?
Ah, I see. It muddies the water completely, makes it hard for the owner to prove a real firing was legitimate.
Precisely. It creates a nightmare scenario from an HR perspective. And you could even argue, what about the emotional toll on the employees themselves? Even if they agree to it, being repeatedly subjected to a fake but stressful firing scenario.
Mm.
It's just messy. James is playing with fire, business-wise.
Okay, so if this prank is too risky, too fraught with problems, what should James be doing? What are the alternatives when a customer is being unreasonable and abusive like that?
The manager's primary role in that situation should be to de-escalate and protect their staff, but using established professional methods.
Like what?
First step, intervene, but calmly. Instead of OP, you're fired. It should be something like, Sir, I understand you're upset about the coffee. Let me handle this. However, I need to ask you to please lower your voice and speak respectfully to my staff.
So address the behavior directly, not the coffee complaint initially.
Exactly. Set a boundary immediately. Make it clear that the way they are complaining is the problem, not necessarily the complaint itself.
And if they keep yelling,
Then you escalate the consequences, but real ones. Sir, I've asked you to be respectful. If you continue shouting, I will have to ask you to leave. Or, we cannot serve customers who are verbally abusive to our employees. Please leave the shop.
refusing service, that's the real consequence.
Yes. A clear, non-dramatic, enforceable consequence. Many businesses have policies about reserving the right to refuse service. James, as the manager, even an informal one, should feel empowered to use that.
So implementing a kind of zero tolerance policy for abuse.
That would be the ideal, yes.
Yeah.
A policy that says we value our customers, but we also value our employees' safety and dignity. Abusive behavior will result in refusal of service. That protects the staff without resorting to, well, elaborate hoaxes.
It teaches a lesson too, arguably a more direct one. Behave badly and you don't get your coffee here.
And it avoids all the reputational and HR risks we just talked about. It's ethically cleaner, managerially sounder.
Okay, that makes sense. The prank is creative, maybe even cathartic for them, but the professional alternatives seem much safer and more sustainable.
Right. The prank is a shortcut to a feeling of justice, but shortcuts often have hidden potholes.
Which brings us back to the big question. Judging the OP's actions. Taking everything into account, the stress, the customer's behavior, the prank's effectiveness, the ethics, the risks. Where do we land? Am I the A or not the A?
Let's recap the arguments. Why might the OP be not the A?
Well, they were defending themselves and their coworker from verbal abuse. The customers were acting entitled and aggressive over minor issues. The prank worked, it stopped the behavior and elicited apologies, and crucially, no real harm was done. The firing was fake. It was creative problem-solving under duress.
Okay. And the arguments for why the OP might be the A?
The core method is manipulation. They intentionally cause someone significant emotional distress by lying about a serious situation, job loss, financial hardship. It leverages a deep societal anxiety in a, well, kind of cruel way, even if short-lived. Plus, it put the business and the manager at considerable risk. It's using the structure of customer service power dynamics in a really problematic way.
So weighing those, what do you come down?
You know, despite the risks and the slightly uncomfortable manipulation aspect, I still land on not they. The context matters immensely. These are teenagers facing down aggressive adults in a situation where they felt they had no other power. The customers created the hostile environment. This was an act of reclaiming agency, however flawed. The satisfaction they felt seems earned, in a way.
I understand that perspective completely. The impulse for justice is strong here, for me. I'm closer to the line. I deeply sympathize with the OP and Danielle, and I abhor the customer behavior they described. The prank's effectiveness is undeniable. But the method still troubles me. Weaponizing that kind of financial desperation, even fictionally, it feels like it punches down in a weird way, using a vulnerability many people share. And the managerial irresponsibility from James is hard to ignore.
So are you leaning towards the A?
No. I think I land on not the A as well, but with a major asterisk. It's NTA, because the core motivation was self-defense against abuse. But the method was poor judgment, high risk, and ethically questionable. James, in particular, needs to stop this immediately and adopt those professional alternatives we discussed. It was maybe justifiable as a one-off desperate measure, but absolutely not as a recurring tactic.
So NTA, but don't do it again, basically.
Pretty much. Find a better, safer way to draw the line.
Okay. A shared verdict, albeit with slightly different levels of enthusiasm.
Let's call it reluctant agreement on NTA.
No, often with these Reddit posts, you get updates later. Did the OP ever follow up? Did the owner find out? Did a prank go wrong?
No, unfortunately, the source material we looked at didn't include any updates. We're left hanging on what happened next.
Which is kind of frustrating. You want to know if they got away with it or if there are consequences?
You do. You hope for the update where maybe James talks to his dad, the owner, and the owner says, "Wow, customer's treating you that badly. Okay, here's a new policy. You have my full backing to refuse service to anyone who yells."
That would be the ideal outcome, turning the bad situation into a positive policy change.
The less ideal update, of course, is the one where a customer complains to the owner about the weird firing drama they witnessed, and James gets in serious trouble. We just don't know.
And what about comments from the Reddit community? We didn't get those either, but we can probably guess the general vibe, right?
Oh, almost certainly. The AITA subreddit often loves stories where entitled people get a dramatic comeuppance, the creativity, the instant regret from the customer.
They'd eat it up.
Absolutely. I'd bet my lunch money the overwhelming verdict in the comments was not the A, probably with lots of cheering for the OP and James. It plays right into that justice served narrative that's so popular.
Yeah, it's the kind of story people share saying, wish I could do this at my job, even if they wouldn't actually dare.
It taps into that shared frustration of service workers everywhere.
So wrapping this up, the big takeaway seems to be about finding ways to cope when the system puts you in a powerless position against abuse. Sometimes that leads to creative solutions.
Creative, yes, but as we saw, creativity can come with significant ethical baggage and practical risks.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you listening to chew on. If the goal is really to teach abusive customers a lesson, to maybe change their behavior long term, what's actually more effective?
Is it the shock and awe approach? The fake, dramatic consequence like the stage firing, which clearly causes immediate regret and apologies, even if based on a lie?
Or is it the more standard, managerially sound approach? Refusing service, banning them from the store, having clear policies about respect and acting real consequences, even if they don't have that same instant dramatic punch?
Which method truly sinks in? Which one might actually make that customer think twice before blowing up at the next barista they encounter? The fake sting or the real banishment?
Does immediate guilt lead to lasting change? Or does a firm, real boundary do more?
That's the question to ponder. What really modifies behavior in these situations?
A really interesting question to leave things on. Thank you, as always, for digging into this with me.
My pleasure. It was a fascinating case study.
And thank you all for joining us here on Kibitz for this look at coffee shop justice. We'll catch you next time.
Take care, everyone.